Donald Trump wants you to forget the Epstein files ever existed. He's convinced himself that because he waved around a bill and pretended it forced the release, we're all supposed to clap politely, look the other way, and let him slither out of the room. Move on, folks. Nothing to see here. But we know exactly what's happening behind the curtain. The same old coordinated scrub job, the industrial strength redaction machine whirring overtime to erase Donald Trump's name anywhere it appears. And now the whole operation is getting exposed by Trump's own pal, Dan Bongino, the guy he shoved into the FBI pipeline specifically to help with the cleanup job. The new leaked emails make it clear this wasn't a one-off. It wasn't spontaneous. This was the plan all along. And it's blowing up in his face in real time. We're going to get into all of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into what Bongino leaked about Trump's Epstein cover-up in those emails, I want to start with what Robert Garcia just said about why we cannot let up, why we have to keep pressing the FBI and the DOJ, especially now that Trump's entire strategy is to make us bored, distracted, and willing to just move on.
Well, again, the Oversight Investigation and the Oversight Committee is leading the Epstein investigation. And so our work is ongoing every single day. Let me just start by sharing also the difference. So we have a law now that's been signed by the president that is asking the DOJ to release the files. Incredibly important for all the members to be on record and for this to sail forward. We also have a subpoena that was passed by the Oversight Committee that forced the hand of all the release of these documents, including the Department of Justice that we have been seeing over the last few weeks and months, and that will continue to produce documents. The difference is we know that the DOJ right now is somehow claiming there's going to be this new investigation or this kind of sham look at Democrats out of the Southern District of New York, which Pam Bondi, of course, announced recently. And there's concern that the language in the legislation speaks to there being a possible look at, well, we may not release documents if there is an active investigation going, which of course is just a deflection on behalf of the Department of Justice. The subpoena doesn't have that language. So even if Pam Bondi wants to use that language to slow down the release of documents, she can't do the same for the subpoena because it does not include that language. And so she has to release the documents and all of the files regardless of a sham investigation. And now there are two strong efforts to ensure that we get those. As far as what's next on oversight, we're now looking at the bank records. We're looking at what were the financial crimes that were happening. Who and what powerful men pay these enormous sums of money to rape and abuse women. And that's what's next for the committee.
It is important to remember, as Robert Garcia keeps hammering home, that a subpoena for the Epstein files was already on the table long before Congress passed any bill. The Oversight Committee has been chasing these documents for months. They've been pushing the DOJ, pushing the FBI, demanding every scrap that shows exactly how deep Donald Trump's cover-up goes. And now the White House is pretending none of that existed. Trump is out there trying to rewrite the whole timeline, claiming the files are only being released because he magnanimously told Republicans to do it. Please. He couldn't stop them if he tried. The momentum was bigger than him, bigger than his whining Truth Social posts, bigger than whatever fantasy storyline he's peddling this week. So now he's doing what he always does, scrambling to shift the narrative. And for anyone who still believes Republicans don't desperately want more information buried, or anyone who needs a gentle shove back into reality, all you need to see is what happened the moment Eric Swalwell moved to subpoena Dan Bongino, the guy who has been a central player in keeping the Epstein files buried.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino to produce and testify what the director is unwilling to discuss and share with Congress, the files related to Jeffrey Epstein, including witness interview records, including FBI Forms 302, search warrant materials, records relating to the initiation of investigations, records relating to financial transactions and payments, evidence collected from wiretaps. The FBI director said today that they've already released these documents. Bongino has reportedly considered resigning from his position over the refusal to release the full Epstein files.
I'm delighted to see that my colleague can read, and I move to lay his motion on the table.
So the deputy director of the FBI, the guy who's been knee-deep in the Epstein file handling, The guy with his fingerprints all over the cover-up gets subpoenaed to appear before Congress, just to answer some questions. Basic stuff. And if everything were as transparent as the White House insists, that shouldn't be a problem, right? If you've got nothing to hide, you don't start sweating when someone turns the lights on. But this is the same Dan Bongino who went on Fox practically in tears over the unbearable hardship of having to show up to his office. Oh, the horror. Oh, the agony. I have to work. Spare me. You'd think a man that put upon might welcome a little break in the form of testifying before Congress. Sit down, answer questions, get a camera pointed at him. It's basically his love language. And yet, Republicans shut it down. Funny how that works. Almost like they know exactly what happens when Bongino gets sworn in and the staffers pull out the receipts. Almost like this sudden burst of protectiveness might have something to do with the panic swirling around his leaked emails, the ones laid out in the article right here. Dan Bongino scrambles to explain Epstein file email redaction. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino is on the defensive after the release of an email showing he'd been made aware of the Trump administration's sweeping redactions of Jeffrey Epstein files on his second day on the job. Bongino, 50, was appointed to the post in March, having caved out a career as a MAGA-friendly podcaster who regularly demanded the government's full and unredacted release of all documents relating to the late pedophile financier. But with the Trump administration having fought a months-long campaign to keep the file secret, which included a frantic scramble by the FBI last spring to make sweeping redactions, Bongino has since changed his tune with minimal explanation. The former law enforcement officer insisted in May, a month after the March and April redaction sprint, that the administration was taking its time with the materials in order to protect Epstein's victims. He had not publicly addressed the file since that time. But internal FBI emails published by Bloomberg over the weekend showed that he had been forwarded an email on March 18th, the day after he joined the Bureau related to guidance on the types of redactions to apply to the Epstein files. After some question what that said about his role in the redactions, Bongino broke his months-long silence on the matter late Sunday to say the email was really just not that big of a deal. Folks, I entered on duty on March 17th. The emails in the chain you see forwarded to me at my request were sent before I began in my position. Bongino wrote on Twitter, I want to review what have sick been done before I entered on duty. It was a priority, and as you can see, they responded immediately. I'm glad that these emails are available for your review. He did not elaborate further on the redactions or what is in the files. However, the internal correspondence obtained by Bloomberg's FOIA files raises questions about Bongino's role in the, quote, special redaction project, as well as about the project itself. The documents show the Bureau scrambling over several months in the first half of 2025 to prepare Epstein-related records for potential release, running up almost $1 million in overtime for staff as the administration dithered over what to make public after promising to release all the Justice Department's Epstein files during his campaign. Trump put Attorney General Pam Bondi in charge of the matter after his return to the White House in February. Bondi further stoked anticipation of major revelations to come by telling supporters Epstein's client list was sitting on her desk. According to Bloomberg, FBI Director Kash Patel then ordered roughly 1,000 agents to the Bureau's Central Records Complex in Winchester, Virginia, for crash redaction training on what he dubbed the Epstein Transparency Project or Special Redaction Project. Between March 17th and March 22nd alone, the Bureau paid $851,344 in overtime. From January to July, staff logged 4,737 overtime hours, more than 70% of which occurred in March, as agents work nights and weekends. On May 10th, at this point, having apparently been aware of the redaction process for almost 2 months, Bongino wrote on Twitter, there are voluminous amounts of downloaded child abuse material that we are dealing with. There are also victim statements that are entitled to specific protections. We need to do this correctly. But I do understand the public's desire to get the information out there. So Bongino was made aware of these redactions and he just sat on them for months. Didn't touch them, didn't address them, didn't so much as blink, even though on day one he was briefed that there was a special project to do exactly what we all know they were doing. Strip Donald Trump's name out of anything radioactive, then sift through the rest to make sure only other people got burned. We know that's what this was. We know that was the job. We know that was the mission. The plan was simple. We combed through everything, folks. Nothing to see here. Time to move on. Don't word. But here's the problem. If Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino now claim they still need more investigation into Bill Clinton or Larry Summers or whoever else they want to throw into the meat grinder this week, then one obvious question pops up. Why did they close the investigation months ago? If there were more people to chase, more dots to connect, more ghosts to hunt, why wrap it up? So what exactly were they doing all that time? Because they sure didn't release anything new. So what were they redacting? What were they scrubbing? What Black Sharpie marathon was happening behind closed doors? It doesn't take a conspiracy theorist. It takes a functioning brain cell to conclude they were scrubbing Donald Trump's name. That's the story these emails are screaming. This whole tough on crime cosplay administration isn't tough on anything except hiding its own fingerprints. And Jasmine Crockett called it out here.
Absolutely. One of the things that we had actually talked about when we had a closed door meeting with the survivors earlier this year, along with the speaker, was the speaker said, "Hey, I'm committed to doing everything that I can." And then obviously he did nothing. But one of the things that we talked about in that closed door meeting was that we needed to expand the breadth of this investigation. And we didn't just need subpoenas that were coming from the oversight committee, but we needed some out of financial services as well, so that financial services could be digging in, because that is the equivalent of the specific committee that oversees Treasury. We know that there were signals because of the type of suspicious activity that was taking place as it relates to Epstein. We know in talking to survivors about how much money was kind of going in and out with wires internationally. And we also know that there seems to be a lot of shell corporations that have been set up not only in the United States, but internationally, a lot of shell and fake modeling agencies that these girls would kind of be run through. We also had been told that there had been a mechanism to make sure that they could get immigration papers that were not necessarily had not necessarily gone through the proper vetting and done correctly, as well as some fake marriages. So there's just a lot. And the thing is, you can't pretend that this sophisticated system was only reliant upon two people. Yes, these two people may have been at the top, but with the level of sophistication, I'm just not sure that there's still not activity that is going on. And that is why this matters even today. I know you went back to the 90s, and yes, you're right. There has been a miscarriage of justice for so many decades. But the question is, by ignoring this, are we still allowing for those same loopholes to make sure that children and women are being victimized today?
I am never surprised. I am always disgusted. That's the entire theme of the Trump era at this point. A government where the bar is in the basement and somehow they keep digging. And yes, there are layers upon layers of Epstein cover-ups. Not just the ones from the 90 seconds, the 2000s, the 2010 seconds. We all know those chapters. I want the story of the first Trump administration, and I want the story of this one. I don't just want the Epstein files. I want every scrap of correspondence from the people who spent years burying them. Every email, every memo, every panicked little delete this moment. We're going to fight for that, and we're going to talk about it every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you.